Chapter 2. Suzie and her Subie. Mo knew exactly where he would find Suzie the Eastern Water Dragon on this hot day, sitting comfortably in her Subaru Brumby. He loved the story of how she had come to have her own real car, and smiled as he thought about it, slithering the last stretch down towards the riverbank. Suzie lived in the old ironbark tree, which had grown so tall and wide over the decades, it looked to be touching the clouds with its mottled gray and black branches. She often climbed as high up its rough trunk as she could, and as a young lizard, she soon discovered that around the river bend she could see a double-laned highway bridge stretched across the river. Her daily ritual was to climb up and watch all the cars and trucks whiz by, praying that one day she would be able to experience what it would be like to be behind the wheel of a real car. Then, when she was ready for a feed, she would jump from the huge tree into the river, always keen for a bit of excitement and a swim. The old giant had survived many storms and floods over time and witnessed many random objects floating by. But in a recent flood, something extraordinary happened. A large answer to a little prayer, one might say. An old rusty car, battered and bashed, was washed onto the muddy bank, anchoring itself neatly at the foot of the ironbark. Suzie was beside herself with joy and gratitude when the waters subsided one special morning, and she scurried home to see if her ironbark had survived another flood. There, lying on her doorstep, was a classic 1980s model Subaru Brumby Ute. It was wrecked, but to Suzie it was a state-of-the-art racing machine. Since then, part of her daily ritual is to climb in through a rust hole in the floor and stand on the steering wheel, peering through the dirty windscreen. She pretends the wind is whipping past the gleaming cream and black lines on her face and back, declaring, "These stripes are my racing stripes, Mo, just like a real racing car." Mo let out a little chuckle as he thought about it approaching the riverbank. Despite it being such a hot day, the bank was still cool and moist, with the ironbark and a few scattered wild fig trees casting mottled shadows on the damp ground most of the day. The pleasant combined aroma of passion fruit, clay mud, and fermenting figs was a unique smell, and it filled Mo with peace and joy. "My eyes feel much better in this dim light," whispered Mo to himself, as he emerged from the long grass next to the ironbark. "And there's Suzie, just where I thought she'd be." He made his way through another large rust hole under the car near the footwell, near the pedals. "Gosh, Suzie, you're going so fast your racing stripes are blurred," joked Mo as he slithered into the dashboard in front of her. Her face lit up when she saw her friend. "I wish," she replied with glee. "I'm just shedding my skin, but I'll have a fresh coat of racing stripes in a few days." "Of course, shedding the old skin. Mine is starting to itch, so I guess my turn is coming too, soon." Mo grimaced in disgust. "I still freak out about that. I guess it's what we reptiles must do, but it does look like a dead, inside-out version of myself staring back at me. Gross." Suzie was a mature water dragon and had lived on the riverbank for many years. She had an exquisite long tail, and small spines ran along it all the way up her spiky back to the top of her head. Like Hallie, she was also there when Mo's mum laid her eggs along the moist edge of the river a couple of years before. She also marveled at how his mum coiled and shivered around her eggs instead of leaving them like most reptiles do. When it was almost time for them to hatch, she quietly disappeared one night. But Suzie was there when Mo, Ray, and Leah poked their tiny heads through the crumpled white eggshells. It was just before sunrise, and a cool mist lay over the river. As Hallie watched over them all from her tree, the brave water dragon carefully guided the three tiny, gooey siblings up to the corrugated iron shed next to the house in the early morning haze. Even from such a young age, the snakelets knew they had to be alert and how to hide. Suzie chuckled as they nervously struck at the odd twig and unassuming toad on the ground, not knowing who or what was out to munch them in this exciting new world. The Subie windows had a thin film of mud and decomposed leaf litter on them, making it damp, gloomy, and quiet. The noise and vibration of the cicadas was far softer now, and Mo could finally curl up and relax in comfort while Suzie played race car driver. She placed her two strong rear talons on the bottom of the steering wheel and gripped the top with her front talons. "I'm ready to race, Mo. I'm going to drive all the way to Willowbank and show 'em how it's done. Vroom!" She often spoke about a race track nearby called Willowbank Raceway. Sometimes on race days, she could hear the roaring of the V8 engines in the distance. "I would cheer for you, Suzie," Mo declared. "With your courage, Mr. Explorer, I would choose you as my driving partner any day of the week." "You could press the pedals," she shouted. Mo smiled, wondering if Suzie really thought he was brave. "Did you know my mum was a brave explorer, Suzie?" "Hallie just told me." "She was indeed," Suzie replied. "When you were about to hatch, she told me she was itching for a new adventure." Mo looked out, watching the rippled river curve around the bend. His highly sensitive belly scales could feel the rattling, clinking, and clanking of the highway bridge. He pondered all about the humans and their cars traveling from Mo's side of the river to, well, the unknown side. Since hatching, Mo explored every inch of his home territory. He had already climbed every tree, peering into the distance, and had stealthily zigzagged all the long grassy areas. He knew every spot from the northern lily-pilly hedge at the top of the paddock, past the frog pond in front of the house, around Mo and Leah's shed, and down to the river. But he felt frustrated at what lay over the bridge, both frightened and called him in a strange tummy-turning sort of way. He was afraid of what dangers lay beyond his home, but could not silence a deep desire to learn more and meet new creatures. It didn't help that Ray and Leah always tuned out whenever he spoke to them about what they thought might lie across the river. "It's not safe for pythons to travel, Mo," they would say. "There are plenty of rats and mice here. Why would we leave?" Their words echoed annoyingly in his mind. Mo decided to ask Suzie. Maybe she would share his desire to explore. After all, she knew about exciting racetracks. "Suzie, where do all those cars go when they cross the bridge?" She stopped pretending to drive and turned to her young friend. Crossing the bridge wasn't spoken about often by the local animals, and it caught her by surprise. I'm not sure, Mo," Suzie answered kindly, pausing for a moment. She realized she probably misled him about actually racing a car far away from home. "I think they just go backwards and forwards all day. They never stop and look or listen to the river. It's a shame." Mo nodded. "It is a beautiful place to live, isn't it?" He coiled up and lay quietly for a while, feeling content to be with his friend. Suzie relaxed and returned to her make-believe. "But what about those really big cars with the huge boxes on their back?" he suddenly blurted. Suzie slipped off the steering wheel with a fright, landing on the muddy leather seat next to Mo. Thud! She sighed and smiled patiently, deciding to give her inquisitive young companion her full attention. "Oh, the trucks, you mean?" she calmly answered. "Yes, they carry all sorts of things all over this land, Australia. The humans just love things." "What sort of things? Other creatures?" Mo's imagination ignited, and the ideas of what other interesting places and animals existed beyond the bridge captivated him. Well, one night a truck broke down near the bridge," began Suzie. "Yes, go on," prompted Mo impatiently. "It was such a cool, calm night I could hear animals talking and moaning amongst themselves. I climbed the tree to hear a little better. They said they were sheep, and they had come from a farm in the outback." "Sheep? I have never heard of a sheep before. What did they look like?" Mo had lifted his head high off the seat by now, enthralled by the story. "I couldn't really see in the dim street lights, and the bridge is rather far, but they seemed a bit like the white, fluffy dogs who live up at the house with the humans, only bigger. Sizzling snags, hissed Mo slowly and quietly in wonder. They said they still had far to travel, so I reckon those trucks go places we have never heard or dreamed of. Mo smiled at the thought. Hallie says I have a pattern shaped like Australia on my back. Can you show me where we are and where the outback is? She didn't want to encourage him about exploring, but could see he was excited and didn't want to disappoint him. She pointed one of her talons carefully toward the map on his back. We're about here somewhere, she suddenly gasped in surprise. Oh my! What is it, Suzie? Mo coiled around to look at his back. Did you know you have a bright golden scale right on the spot on your map where we live here in Queensland? It is remarkable. You really are a special snakelet. Suzie took the tip of Mo's tail and poked it on the scale on Mo's little Australian map-like mark. Mo giggled a little as it tickled him. We're in the east of Australia, right? He asked. And the sun rises in the east? That's where Hallie says she must look before she says cuckoo cuckoo ka in the morning. East, correct. That's why humans call me an eastern water dragon. Then she pointed his little tail towards the middle of the shape. That's pretty much the outback. Okay, so that means the outback is west of us, where the sun sets. Mo pondered for a moment. The sun looks kind of close when it sets. How long would it take me to slither there and back? Half a day? I want to meet some sheep, and maybe if I'm lucky, even some other snakes. I bet there are amazing snakes out there. Suzie stared at Mo in shock. She knew he was going to want to explore and regretted giving him the idea. He was only a small, thin snake, and Suzie worried what would happen to him away from the paddock. Mo, it would take you months to slither there. The sheep had been on a truck for the entire day, and you see how fast they go clinkety-clonk over the bridge every day. In any case, it's too dangerous for a little snake like you. Mo nodded and dropped his head again. Sizzling snags. Australia's that big, hmm? My little map is obviously much smaller by scale. Yes, your scales are smaller by scale, giggled Suzie, nudging him with her tail. But Mo was not in the mood for puns or word play. Ray and Leah are always telling me to enjoy our little paradise here. Go find a plump mouse, then curl up in the garage roller door for a few days. That's living. Maybe I should listen to them and just be a normal python. You have Hallie and I, and of course Ray and Leah here, Mo, and even though you don't get along, the noisy miners are company too, I guess. Thank you, Suzie. Mo knew she had a point, but he couldn't stop thinking about his explorer mum and what adventures lay beyond the bridge. Suzie felt terrible for getting him excited about going to the racetrack. I was only dreaming about the racetrack, Mo. Reptiles like us aren't meant to go on adventures. That's okay, he replied. I had better head back. The sun is going down, and Ray and Leah will be waking up to go hunting soon. They'll wonder where I am. The paddock was now a grassy canvas striped with late afternoon shadows. The house, shipping container, and trees were dark silhouettes against a warm orange and pink sky as Mo slithered up the slope. On a thick branch of the bottle-brush tree, the small black figure Mo knew so well began her early evening cackle. All her friends in trees across the dusk landscape began to call back. It was a typical Queensland summer's evening. I guess it is special here, whispered Mo. But where did Mum go? And why didn't she stay like the rest of us? Or come back? There must be more out there. If only I had the courage to go and see for myself. He swiftly made his way back up the grassy area, weaved through the vine. He took a shortcut under the trampoline all the way to the iron shed, curled up in his roller door, and waited for nightfall.